How do I grease the piston of the Stipula Tocco Ferro? I was hoping it would be similar to other piston fillers, or maybe require some finesse like the Lamy 2000. But its tapered body has me stumped and reluctant to start unscrewing things that may not unscrew. Thanks. Well, Della Panella, I would say that it's complicated. It's not meant to be completely user disassemblable, which I know seems kind of weird because a lot of pens these days are kind of going that route. But it's not that unusual, especially for some of the Italian pen companies that are used to making pens that are a little in the higher price range. It's not unusual to have pens that are not completely user disassemblable. And that's some interesting feedback that I can give to them, because I'm more in direct communication with some of the manufacturers these days. And I think this whole idea of having user serviceable pens is still kind of a relatively newer concept for a lot of these pen companies, especially ones that have been around 60, 70, 80 years. There was a time when, people were much more handy and they're familiar with them, so they work on them. And then there was a time where people were not at all informed and could not work on them at all. And now I think with the rise of the internet and social media and people sharing information very openly, very freely, having online tutorials on how-tos on YouTube and stuff like that, doing videos like this, I think it's much more common to be able to do that kind of stuff. So it's kind of making a resurgence, but not everybody's like jumping on the train, and it's not always easy to develop every pen to be that way. And this is one that is not, quite frankly. So there's no way to that I've discovered without basically breaking the pen, by experimenting, by being able to remove the piston in the back end out of this thing. It's all kind of glued and together and stuff like that. I've tried to really ratchet it down almost to the point where I feel like I'm going to break it. I haven't gone to the point where I actually did break it, because I just frankly am not that brave, and I like this pen and they're limited and I don't want to go destroying it just for that purpose. But you can kind of find a way around it. And I hope I have some toothpicks handy, because I wanted to actually demonstrate you. And I know whenever I sit down, there's always something that I forget. And then this time, it has been a toothpick. So if you can bear with me for a hot second, I'm going to go grab a toothpick, and then I can do a full demo for you. So hang tight. All right. Got my toothpick. Here we go. So whenever you have a situation where you have a pen that's got a piston and you're not able to take it apart, as long as you're able to remove the nib unit out of it, you should be okay. Because basically what's going on here is you have the ink reservoir inside here, you have the piston, which moves up and down as you screw it and unscrew it. And the Stipula, if you're not familiar with it, for whatever reason, their pistons go in the reverse direction. So normally you would go righty to have the piston come up, and lefty, counterclockwise, to have the piston go down, but it's the opposite this way. So here I'm turning, so it feels very strange, just because I don't know any other company that has it this way, but this is just the way the Stipula does it. So if you are moving the piston up and down, over time, the grease that's naturally in here might kind of wear away, break down and all that, and you're going to feel more resistance, the piston on the side walls of the inside of the reservoir. So what is nice is being able to maintain it and grease it up and keep it operating smoothly. So if you can't disassemble it back, like if you have think about a TWSBI or something like that, it's pretty easy. Noodler's pens, you're able to kind of remove them. You can't do that on this one, and there's several other pens that are like that. It's not super, super uncommon to have it. So one thing you can sometimes do is yank the nib and feed out like this, but you're going to have not very much space to be able to get in here. So what we're going to do, and since we can't get to the back end of this, we're going to try going from the front end. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see more what I have going on here. Okay, so here is our Stipula. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take and I'm going to grab right here with a little bit of pressure, and I'm going to put some pressure on here. I don't want to grab the end of the tines because I could end up bending it, and that would not write very well. So I just grab that and then very firmly kind of put pressure on it. I'm holding it kind of like that. Put pressure on it, and I can just screw the body of the pen. And so what this is doing is it's removing the nib unit out of here. And it's just like if you have an Edison pen. I've shown that demo before, but this is what's going on. Now the only weird thing is it's got this O-ring on it, which is supposed to be up at the top. This is to help keep the ink from getting up into here or coming downward. It's basically just from hanging out up here when it's not supposed to. And that needs to be seated right at the edge of your nib housing. So just be aware of that. because if you remove it, that thing could get stuck up there, it could get lost, and then it could jam and cause some weird things. So just be conscious of that. And then if you look inside the pen here, I'm going to see if I can get you some good light. You can see there's like this dark ring inside there, okay? So that is the connection point where the nib housing connects to the inside of the barrel. So you have this orange barrel in here, that is your ink window, and that goes inside this metal grip, and then the housing connects up inside of the pen right here. So we don't have a ton of room to work with in here, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm going to use it to kind of work my way into the inside here, and then I can access the inside of the walls of the pen. Now there's not a ton of room to work there, so I'm actually going to kind of bend the toothpick a little bit. It might kind of break just a tad, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and kind of hook it like that, okay? And then that way I can access the side walls of my piston, of my reservoir. So I just grab a little silicone grease, which I should have handy here somewhere. Okay, where is my silicone grease? Here we go. So I got a little Goulet silicone grease. So I don't need a lot, but just a little bit of silicone grease on the edge of my toothpick, okay? You don't want a ton because you don't want to be getting it everywhere that it's not supposed to be. But you just want to get it, you know, like so. It's clear, so you can't really see it that well. But there you go. See, it's a little bit on the end. And then I'm just going to kind of work it right into the hole. Boom. And then I just take and kind of smear it, right? Can you see where I smeared it? Oh, it's starting really hard to focus on the pen. It wants to focus on my beautiful face here. And then I just kind of rub it on the inside of the walls, okay? And then you can do that a couple times, whatever you feel you need to. But basically, once that is in place, oh gosh, there we go. I always forget which direction to turn it, especially when I use it in my left hand. Go back and forth, and it's going to feel a little bit smoother. So you can do that a couple of times. It's not as good as if you can remove the entire thing and grease it up, but this is a pretty good substitute for being able to do it. And it just allows you to be able to service it. You don't need to do this a lot. Maybe once every, I don't know, 4 or 6 months if you're using it as you feel it's necessary. And then to insert the housing back in, you just kind of want to do the same thing. Just kind of cup the nib around your fingers like that, making sure not to do anything crazy with the tines. Make sure your O-ring is kind of seated up against there, and then just kind of seat it in the pen. The threads will screw in nicely, and make sure that O-ring seats in there well. Make sure it's not like sticking out. Make sure it doesn't have a ton of resistance, and then it should fit fairly flush when it's back in place. And there you go. And I've got it, the nib aligns nicely with the stipula, and I'm pretty much good to go, and it's been re-greased. So that's the best way to do it. I would recommend doing this method. It's a little bit safer. You know, the nib housing and stuff is pretty durable, and you're not going to end up breaking anything, most likely. I can't guarantee that because I've seen some amazing things that people have done with pens that I thought could never be done. But that should get you in pretty good shape. And again, you can use this method on a lot of other piston pens, not just this one. I've used it on Pelican pens. I've used it on the Lamy 2000. It can be very handy. And it doesn't really take a lot of work. Just a little silicone grease and a little toothpick. And you can be greased and good to go.